Here we are at the back of the church, of course, a familiar place to all of us. Last week when I did my video reflection, I did it from the porch of Montgomery House overlooking the campus on a day that is not quite as beautiful as today is. Today is a beautiful day outside. And after that went out, I had some feedback from people about how much they enjoyed seeing the campus, our shared sacred space as I described it last week. And someone wrote to me and said that they would like to get a glimpse of some of the other sacred spaces that we share together, and mentioned the back of the church here, and particularly this window that is at the back of the church. So I'm just going to open up the picture a bit and then move the camera back so you can get a more complete picture of this window. I've always thought it was interesting that this window is at the back of the church, where those of us who are up front looking out at the congregation can see it and enjoy it. But those of you sitting in the congregation sit with your backs to it most of the time. But it's a beautiful window, and I know some of you know this, but I imagine many of you have not read the little description of this window that is found underneath it. It's meant to be a depiction of creation, actually. And I love it because it's absolutely a metaphor for creation. It strikes me as flowing energy and flowing color, which God calls forth as the universe and the world are brought into being. And as I'm speaking and we're looking at this window, you can hear the sound of tree trimmers outside, actually, maybe, which is a reminder that holy space also intersects always with our daily lives that go on around it and in it and through it. Right underneath this window, of course, is our baptismal font, and it's really very appropriate that we have the font not only here at the entrance of the church, where it signifies the path of entry into the Christian community, but it's also a beautiful thing that it's here in front of this window depicting creation, because baptism is a sacrament of new creation. It's a sacrament in which we are meant to be recreated as members of the body of Christ, as people who are claimed as Christ's own forever. It is meant to be the beginning of a journey in which we are able to be transformed in the light and love of God as we meet that light and that love in Jesus. And because it's Lent and because we're approaching Holy Week, we have the Stations of the Cross up that the youth and the kids have helped to decorate. And you can see it there just behind the font. And this particular station that rests here is called Darkness and then Burial. And right now, it seems really appropriate to me that we should have this juxtaposition of things, this beautiful window of creation, the station of the cross about darkness and burial, and then the baptismal font, which marks our entry into Christian community, into Christ, into a new relationship with God, into new possibilities of being. That symbolizes God's desire to recreate us. And the reason that juxtaposition is so interesting to me is because the window of creation, of course, symbolizes our coming into being as everyone's and everything's coming into being. But in order to really pass through the waters of the font and truly find new life and truly be recreated and truly find a new way of living in God, we have to pass through a certain kind of darkness. and a certain kind of burial, which is certainly what we are passing through right now. And so how these things line up at the back of our church, this shared sacred space of ours, is really interesting to me, today especially. I debated whether to be honest about sharing this with you, but I decided it was really important that I was honest about sharing this with you. I find myself really struggling a lot. Everything around us has sort of seeped into me in a way that it hadn't before. And it's made it really hard the last couple of days to accomplish things, to move forward, to do the things that need to be done. In fact, I stayed in my pajamas longer today than I usually have, and it was a lot to find energy to take a walk today, and a lot actually to find energy to make this video reflection. I almost didn't do it, but I felt like I had made a commitment to do it, and it was important to do it, and I wanted to make sure I did it in the end. And I debated about whether to be honest with you about that, just because we're all struggling, I think. But then I realized that's precisely the reason I had to share it with you, is because I'm not the only one. We are all struggling. And some days it's easier for some of us, and some days it's really harder. Today is really hard for me for reasons that I can't quite describe. And maybe it is for you, and I'm sure there have been other days that are harder for you. Some days there are reasons for that. Like today, they announced that school will not be reconvening physically for the rest of this school year. And you think of how that affects kids and how that affects seniors especially, whose senior years have been disrupted and long for the things they've waited all their high school career to have, which are not going to happen, at least not in the same way now. So it's a lot, isn't it, that we're holding together. And so I guess the last few days I've really felt in that place between creation and the baptismal font, new life. I felt myself really to be in that darkness and burial place where that station of the cross is located. But I'm trying to find new life. I'm trying to reach out for that. I'm trying to turn around my own thinking and my own feeling, but I realize that I have to be gentle with myself about that, and we all do. We have to get help where we need it. We have to rely on our spiritual disciplines when we can, and we'll get through it. We'll get to a better spot. We will get to that place of new life. But sometimes you have to spend some time in the tomb. I feel like that's where I am right now, and that's where all of us are, in a sense, right now. And so it's interesting to be in this space knowing that we're going into Palm Sunday and Holy Week, when we remember Jesus' passage through death and burial and his time in the tomb, and ultimately his emergence into new life. And the celebration of that emergence at Easter is going to be really different this year. And I'm trying to get myself ready for that too. But the truth of the matter is, new life always comes. That is at the heart of our faith. But first, you have to pass through the darkness and the difficult times before you can pass into that space of new life. So there's some hope in that for me, and I hope for you too. I don't share this with you because I want you to worry about me. I don't want you to worry about me. You've got enough to worry about. But I wanted to be honest that I'm struggling today, because maybe you are too. And you know what? It's okay. And we'll get through the time of struggle, and we'll find a way together to hold on to new life. And this sacred space that we share together on most Sundays is that space that will be the crossroads where all of our desires and longings for new life will cross and come together, when ultimately we get to come together one of these days again in this sacred place. But in the meantime, wherever you find yourself today, whether you find yourself struggling or in a good place, as I hope you do today, or wherever you might be, remember this energetic window of creation that brought you into being, that divine energy of the Spirit. Remember that station of the cross that is our necessary passage sometimes through darkness and the tomb. And remember the font that stands in front of all of that, calling us to new life, to new hope, to everlasting love in God. Be well. Take care.